In 1865, the U.S. government made a promise that could have changed everything. 40 acres and a mule to every newly freed slave. Within a year, that promise was broken. What if it hadn't been? The debate over reparations today centers on how this broken promise set Black Americans back for generations. From wealth gaps to health disparities, the legacy of slavery is still visible in Black America. Is it fair to demand payment for injustices committed over 150 years ago? And how would reparations even work? We'll trace that promise's reversal, see how its legacy still echoes in today's gaps, explore the arguments for and against reparations, and ask if the nation can ever truly pay its debt. Back in January 1865, a group of 20 Black ministers met with Union General William Sherman in Savannah, Georgia, to voice the hopes of newly freed people. Their message was clear: land ownership was essential for true freedom and self-sufficiency. Responding to their plea, Sherman issued Special Field Order No. 15, setting aside 400,000 acres of seized coastal land out of a total 850,000 acres for exclusive use by formerly enslaved families. Each family would receive 40 acres, and the Army would lend them mules to work the land. For a brief moment, it looked like economic independence was within reach. That hope didn't last. After Lincoln's assassination, President Andrew Johnson reversed Sherman's order. By mid-1867, all but 75,000 acres had been returned to white landowners who pledged loyalty to the Union. Black families who had begun building new lives were forced off the land, shutting the door on the possibility of generational wealth. Historians agree this loss had devastating long-term effects, making it nearly impossible for Black Americans to build the foundation for economic security that land ownership provides. The U.S. government's priorities were clear. While freed people got nothing, slave owners were often compensated. In 1862, about 900 D.C. slaveholders received the equivalent of $23 million today for their lost property. Overseas, Britain paid slave owners the equivalent of tens of billions today, and Haiti was forced into enormous debt for freedom, yet neither ever paid those who suffered. Again and again, those who profited from slavery received support, while those who endured it were left with little. This broken promise and its aftermath laid the groundwork for the deep inequalities that still exist. The lasting impact is visible in the economic landscape facing Black Americans today. Calls for reparations today focus on addressing the consequences of policies and setbacks that have blocked Black Americans from building wealth and health over generations. Black Americans hold just 2.6% of the nation's wealth, despite making up 13% of the population. The average white family has about $80,000 more in net worth than the average Black family. These numbers are not random. They reflect a history of obstacles, from redlining, which denied Black families access to home loans and rising property values, to the collapse of the Freedmen's Savings Bank. By 1874, that bank's mismanagement had wiped out nearly $3 million in savings for 61,144 depositors, erasing hard-won progress almost overnight. Researchers call it a slave health deficit, linking higher rates of hypertension and diabetes in Black communities to generations of forced labor, malnutrition, and medical exploitation. These health gaps are not just statistics, they're rooted in a long history of inequity. Some cities and states are testing ways to repair this harm. In 2021, Evanston, Illinois used cannabis tax revenue to fund the nation's first local reparations program, offering up to $25,000 per household in housing grants to Black residents harmed by past discrimination. California's task force has proposed financial compensation for families displaced by highway construction or harmed by healthcare discrimination, targeting specific injustices that kept Black communities from thriving. Who should qualify for reparations, and how much should be paid? There's no easy answer. Some proposals use ancestry, others focus on broader harm. Estimates range from $80,000 per person to $2.6 trillion nationwide. Supporters say that while the process may be imperfect, starting to repair centuries of harm is better than doing nothing. Still, not everyone agrees with this approach. The debate over reparations raises difficult questions about history, responsibility, and what justice should look like today. Opponents of reparations often focus on the passage of time and personal responsibility. They argue that slavery ended 159 years ago, and no one alive today owned slaves or was enslaved. Senator Mitch McConnell summed up this view: "I don't think reparations for something that happened 150 years ago, for whom none of us currently living are responsible, is a good idea." He points to the Civil War and civil rights legislation as evidence that the nation has already addressed slavery's legacy. Others worry that reparations could inflame racial divisions. Coleman Hughes, a fellow at the Manhattan Institute, warns that turning the issue into a financial transaction could undermine genuine reconciliation. He suggests that reparations might divide the country further, making it harder to build coalitions to solve current problems. The process of determining eligibility is another challenge. Should all Black Americans qualify, or only those who can trace their ancestry to enslaved people? For many, tracing lineage is nearly impossible, especially in states with limited historical records. The financial scale of reparations is daunting. One estimate, based on $80,000 per person for roughly 30 million descendants, puts the total cost at $2.6 trillion. Some calculations, factoring in the full economic impact of slavery, reach as high as $16 trillion. Even advocates recognize the difficulty of funding such a large program. Black conservatives like Burgess Owens argue that reparations grant to the white race a wicked superiority and brand blacks as hapless victims. He believes true healing should not depend on the guilt, pity, profits, and benevolence of the white race. Yet, the United States has paid reparations before, to Japanese American internees under the 1988 Civil Liberties Act and to survivors of the Tuskegee study, demonstrating such efforts are not without precedent. With these arguments in mind, the reparations debate remains a complex question about what, if anything, can repair the damage of America's past. Instead, the conversation now turns to how the country might address the consequences of its past. Cities like Evanston have started local reparations programs, and states such as California are studying their own proposals. In May 2023, Representative Cori Bush proposed a $14 trillion reparations plan, showing that the issue remains active in national politics. Where do you stand? Drop your view in the comments. Should reparations be monetary or take other forms like land grants, health programs, educational funds, or not at all? The promise of 40 acres lives on, in our laws, our economy, and this conversation. If you think the past still shapes the present, if you believe history gives context to the chaos, and if you're into breaking down today's issues through a historical lens, then hit like, smash subscribe, and turn on that bell. Because around here, it's not just news, it's today in context.